Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to some P-47M gameplay. Now, first things out of the way, I might be a bit biased in this playing gameplay because this might happen to be one of my favorite vehicles premium-wise in the game, but I'll try to be as on course as possible because we're not really going to be talking about the P-47 for se, but rather about boom and zoomers, especially those in the American tech tree. I want to touch on to the matter of 50 cals, I want to touch on to the matter of climbing, and most importantly, debunk some myths about how boom and zoomers actually perform. Because boom and zoomers happen to be the most standard aircraft right in the American tech tree. Germans have this combo of Focke-Wulfs as boom and zoomers and very good defensive flyers, and the combo of Bf-19 as the energy fighter. You'll find the Griffins to be in the same kind of range. Spitfires are more of a turn fighter, at least the early ones. The Russians have a low altitude, great performance overall. And the Americans are just kind of stuck with this boom and zoom pattern, and people don't like that. They don't like it because they get 50 cals, they're not familiar with 50 cals, they can't execute proper boom and zoom maneuvers, they get killed when they're zooming away. We're going to touch on to all of that. But first, I really want to emphasize the importance of boom and zoom aircraft in a theoretical manner. And that is that boom and zoomers are not designed, or at least not in the current game meta, made to be on top of the team with 5 to 7 kills carrying the match. It can happen. If you're able to outclimb the enemy, play it extremely safe, preserve your time, preserve your energy, you could very easily kill the entire enemy team with a single plane. But those are going to be rare matches, because first you have to get to altitude. So unless you're willing to sacrifice a good 7 to 9 minutes of your time side climbing, usually people are better off climbing to medium altitudes and then just going for whatever is down low, which is, fine for the individual for doing it so, but at the end, usually matches are lost because if everybody's hugging the ground targets, whichever plane has the altitude advantage tends to win. Now, the reason boom and zoomers are disliked, at least this is just my little opinion on it, is that they require patience. And people don't have patience. At least I know for myself, speaking from personal experience, I'm one of the most impatient people in the world. And therefore, I don't like climbing. I don't like wasting time. Even though I might be watching a video or listening to a live stream, I don't find it the most exciting of things. This is why I've spent a lot of my time playing tank battles, because there's little to no effort required. The action starts as soon as you leave the spawn point. But there is a trick to it. Boom and zoomers don't have to climb. Not for se. Boom and zoomers don't have to go each in their own manner, pattern, or around the side of the map. They don't have to go up to 7, 8k. You can very easily perform in the P-47 at a mediocre altitudes between 3 and 5k. But this tactic will only work if you have teammates that are either at the same altitude or the same energy state or slightly above you, ready to swap targets. And this is the important bit. When you're fighting in a boom and zoomer and you want to have a bit of fun, not the kind of boring solo side climb and waste a lot of time, you need to work with your teammates at every moment. It doesn't require you to use chat, it doesn't really require you to use game commands, it just requires you to use your eyes, simple situational awareness, and a lot of the C key. The C key is extremely important, not just for tanks, not just for planes, not just, hell, even in bombers you could probably use it. Use the C key, look around you, find targets, and learn how to use the C key whilst using your keyboard to control the maneuvers of your aircraft. Not everything has to be done with your mouse. Now, the tactic of target switching is so you don't fixate. If I fixate on a target, that means that I choose a target, and whatever it takes, I'm going to go and execute them. Sometimes it's best to just go away. You make an attempt, you fail it, you might damage the enemy player, you might set them on fire, whatever it is, disengage. Always go for the targets that are most appropriate and, that you are closest to and easiest for you to eliminate. Here, for example, I've chosen to attack the G8N1. Not an ideal target, I'm simply making a quick pass, getting some damage in, and as soon as I finished my rather poor attempt, I only managed to kill the rear gunner, I execute the zoom. Now, since it's a bomber and he's diving away, I don't have to worry about actually moving. If this was a fighter and he was going back on my 6, starting to spray, that would have been a bit of a problem. Now, the target I engage is a J2M3. I'm coming from below, he can't see me, the radar has not popped in yet, and he's probably AFK watching some YouTube video somewhere. He finally realizes that I'm behind him, but at this point it's too late, he gets pilot sniped, and that's game over. This is one of the fastest ways to grab up kills. You don't have to side climb. If I was to side climb, that player would have been long aware that I'm actually there, because you're more susceptible to spotting people above you. just from the game mechanics than there are spotting people below you. So approaching people from behind, from this kind of a blind spot, means that you can very often get kills without them noticing you're there. And this is why I like the aggressive gameplay. It's because every single match I can usually rank up about one kill that is pretty much a player unaware that I'm even there, present on his 6. Now I'm in an altitude position where I'm not properly positioned. I've got a Ki-84 behind me, I'm traveling at extremely low speed, and I'm in a plane that can't maneuver. So what am I going to do? Well, first I'm going to spark some shells off. Nothing serious there. The Juggernaut is still an extremely good plane, and the Ki-84 forced him to overshoot. I got air brakes, and I can much easily work with that. Now, there's some damage on the left wing, so I'm going to have to be very wary of making right-handed maneuvers. What do? I do nothing. I try to reverse him, I make sure he's not engaging me, and this is where the target fixation comes to play. Me and the Bearcat are now engaging 2 players. He's after the N1K, he now swaps his target for the Ki-84, and I go for the N1K, an extremely important decision. This will confuse the enemy, it's going to give us an opportunity to get some breathing space, and it will actually end up being one of the best decisions we've done this match. The important bits to note here is that the P-47 is not an aircraft I like to see myself with a lot of kills with. It's an aircraft I like to use as a support plane, baiting for the players that I have on my team and working with the victory in mind rather than actually getting kills. And this is because it's a premium plane. If you're looking for something to get a lot of kills with, the best thing to do is get some kind of a Spitfire, do a bit of low altitude turn fighting, kill a couple of bombers, and you're done. Now, the Bearcat is still fighting the Ki-84, so I have to keep the N1K in a low altitude, scissoring turn fight. This is really the last place you would want to use the P-47 with, but I know that if I can buy just a little bit of time, the FNF can come in and get himself an extremely easy kill. And that's just what's happening here. I'm using my air brakes, I'm using my throttle control, and I'm using a little bit of my flaps to get myself onto the 6 of the N1K. Now, if 50 cals were extremely overpowered, and they're not, and we'll touch on the 50 cals a little bit later, I could have gotten the kill there. But it doesn't matter, because the Bearcat is now in a perfect position, the M1K is at low altitude, low speed, in a turn fight. Simple, easy bait. That gives me an assist, that gives me a teamwork, and that gives me an opportunity to win this match and end up without any kind of losses. And this is what matters for me, is flying these planes has to be done in a teamwork manner, not so much individually. You see, individual action in a team-based game will never produce the best results. So what you should be always focusing on is that if there's a player in your 6, even if you know 100% there's no way you're going to get out of it alive, try. Try to squeeze out that little bit of power from your plane, because in worst case scenario, you can at least get your teammate an easy kill. What an often mistake is with boom and zoomers is that when they get a player on their 6, they dive down straight for the deck. It works great in theory, but in practice what happens is you've now taken your friendly teammates that might be up between 3,000 to 4,000 meters, and you've dived down to the deck, meaning that your teammate has to dive after you, waste all of his time and energy just so he can kill a player. So instead, try a spiraling maneuver. Whenever you're evading an enemy player, try to go closer to your teammate. Don't fly beneath them, don't fly into them. Try to set them up for an easy kill. But make sure that before your teammate approaches, put the enemy player into a very weak energy state. Whether that's a low speed, whether that's a turn, just try to make it as easy for your teammates to finish the job. And trust me, the results after a couple of matches of testing this out are absolutely fantastic. And what's fun is that I know that a lot of people are extremely enticed by the idea of getting kills. I am too. I love matches where I can rank up a ridiculous amount of kills. But really what brings a smile to my face is seeing the teamwork come into play. Now, the last 2 players are a Ki-83 that returned back to the runway, or the carriers, I think actually managed to land, and a G8N1. That's the same one that I engaged previous to the start of the match. So we're simply going to make our way over there. The plane is slightly damaged, there's no damage to the engine itself, and whilst we're just going over there, why don't I touch on the actual plane? Because this still is about the P-47. What is it like? Well, it's a standard P-47. There's not much for P-47 for me to say. It's just such a fantastic plane to fly. 850 cals are more than overkill for a plane this size. You could easily work with 6 of them, but a little bit of spray material is never a bad idea. Personally, I prefer to load stealth at a convergence of 300, and that's because that's a convergence at which I engage the players. People always ask me what's the convergence I should use. Well, it's quite simple. I can't tell you what conversions you should use because I'm not you, but what you can do is look for when you start firing at the enemy player. So if you find yourself comfortable opening fire at 500 meters, then your optimal convergence might be between 400 and 500. For me, I like to open fire very, very close to the enemy plane to ensure that the damage is maximum. And so to make the optimum convergence, you want to start firing, or rather set your convergence to when you start firing the most. So for me, it's 300, and you can see that the most effective range of 300 meter convergence is between 200 and 400 meters. That is when I like to open fire. That is when I have the most effective damage output. Now, man-engine controls. I have not talked about man-engine controls in months, but I like to put mine between, I'd say, 79 and 85% on the mixture at all times. There's no need to swap the turbocharger as there is no different gear, and your cowl flaps can be set, or radiator flaps can be set to about 20 to 30%. As for the fact this thing's a premium, of course the question will pop up, is it worth the money? Now, I'm not aware at the moment how much it costs. I know it's available through a pack of sorts, but if you are looking for a tier 4 premium plane to grind, the P-47 alongside the Focke-Wulf A8, the Spitfire LF Mark 9, and the P-51D10, I believe, is hands down, one of the 4 great options. Really, you can't go wrong. And this is what I love about the American tech tree, is that the premium planes at top tier are fantastically distributed, because you have the P-47 as your standard boom and zoomer, you have the P-51 as a boom and zoomer / energy fighter, the Focke-Wulf as that traditional, captured premium, and of course the Spitfire as the I'd call it British easy mode, or a bit of a no-brainer. I like the Spitfires, don't require a lot of attention, they don't require a lot of thought put into them, and from a defensive flying perspective, yes, defensive flying with Spitfires is still dramatically easier than that of boom and zoomers. But it's not to say that boom and zoomers don't have their role in the game. And by far the greatest trick of the P-47M has to be in those hidden air brakes. A lot of people don't know they exist, but this plane does get air brakes, and they come in extremely handy if you have to brake and force the enemy player to overshoot at low altitude. And that is exactly what I will leave you out with today. 2 very short clips at the end of the video, just taken out of one of the matches I played on Sicily. First one is me diving after a Focke-Wulf 190A5. And what I do here is a little trick, turning the plane slightly sideways. And what that does is it pretty much denotes the idea of convergence. If the convergence is set sideways, it becomes slightly vertical rather than horizontal convergence, which can result into a more effective spread of the guns. So if you're struggling shooting something that's in front of you because your guns are mounted so wide in the wings and you're using a wrong convergence rate, try forcing the plane into a 90-degree side turn. And the other thing that we have to touch upon is, what do we do when the plane is in a useless position? That means you're low on speed, you're damaged, there's a player in your 6, and they are a better turn fighter than you are, they have a better energy position. There's really not much that you can do. Well, you might as well try. If there are no teammates to bait for, if there are no bombs that you can somehow drop to get them off your tail, if there's no AAA in the area, if there's absolutely nothing you can help yourself with, and you're in an absolute solo situation, try. Try, because sometimes it might just happen that you end up on top. And with the use of the P-47's flaps, throttle control, and the sneaky air brakes I've mentioned a couple of times, you can even manage to pull something like this out. And of course, whilst this could be attributable to the K4 pilot being stock, or being uncomfortable, or getting, sweaty palms or something like that, you don't know unless you try, and the P-47 is a plane that has a couple of hidden aces up its sleeve, which people tend to completely ignore and look over, because when you look at a P-47 at low altitude, you probably think to yourself, well, there's really not much that he can do. There's plenty of tricks up the sleeve, and setting the planes on fire is another one of those. Unfortunately, it's funny enough how the K4 managed to get back to the airfield, repair, and the Focke-Wulf 190 that we're engaging now, I ended up completely outmaneuvering and then crashing into the ground. Good thing, of course, nobody saw that, and our team totally didn't lose the match. But whatever the case might be, I had a fantastic time flying this thing out tonight, and I will definitely fly it out more in the future. Of course, as soon as some kind of grind session happens with patch 1.67. And this is something I want to talk about real briefly. 1.67 is probably about 2 to 3 weeks away, so I think I'm going to be playing a couple of more premium planes, a couple of premium tanks, do a couple of, kind of reviews, look into some of the tactics of the premium planes, because as soon as the patch hits, a lot of people are going to be looking at the premiums, and so I think it's only about time that I show you which planes will get you the most performance for the buck. And when it comes to the P-47, if I have to say, is this plane something you should purchase? For me, hands down, it's definitely worth the money grab because it's an absolute joy to fly around with. Anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think about the P-47M in the comment section below. If there's some kind of a premium plane or a normal plane you want to see reviewed, or if there's a tactic you want me to look at, by all means, put it in the comment section below. But until next time, take care and safe flying.